Yo guys, what is up? Here we are with another reading video, and today we are on chapter 15 of The Boys Who Challenged Hitler by Philip Hoos. That's all I gotta say, so let's get right into it. Chapter 15, Nyborg State Prison. The fortress known as Nyborg Stenshell held 800 adult men behind a maze of red brick walls and barbed wire. Many inmates were serving sentences for violent crimes. Sometimes they were packed forward to a cell. Armed and uniformed guards patrolled a walkway above the perimeter wall. About noon on a September day in 1942, 7 handcuffed teens spilled out of their bus and stood uneasily while paperwork was completed. As the bus pulled away for Aalborg, with the driver waving them good luck, they were taken into custody by guards in black uniforms and gold buttons. The new prisoners were ushered into the high-ceilinged main building. One of the boys nervously cracked a joke, which brought a guard whirling around. "All conversation is prohibited," he shouted. The boys were separated. Each was directed to empty the contents of his pockets. Each possession was confiscated, even eyeglasses and family photos. They were forced to strip naked, bend over, and retrieve rectal examinations. They were issued prison uniforms, long pants and a jacket that buttoned all the way down. KNUD Pedersen's arms and legs poked out as usual. Next, the barber got his turn. Clumps of the teenagers' carefully groomed hair fell to the floor beneath the electric razor. "When I lost most of my hair, I also lost a big part of me," Egil Astrup Fredrickson later recalled. The boys were led to the youth wing of the prison, Division K. They were the only occupants. Each boy was issued a cell number and a personal number. KNUD Pedersen, now prisoner 28, stepped into cell 1. Jens Pedersen, prisoner number 30, was locked into cell 2. From then on, guards addressed the boys by their numbers. "Get up, 30," instead of their names. Each cramped cell contained an iron-framed bed, a table, and a chair. The toilet was a clay pot to be cleaned by the prisoner. Each boy got 2 sheets of toilet paper per day. As in the King Hans Gades jail, the cells consisted of 4 solid walls. The entrance was a heavy door with no handle on the inside, but a peephole for looking in. A small barred window looked out onto the red brick wall patrolled by a Danish guard. I would watch the guy, Ned recalled. He was so bored that sometimes I could see him counting the number of bricks in the wall with his finger. That's all he had to do. They were governed by countless rules, relentlessly applied. Parents could visit only once every 3 months, and then for only 20 minutes. Family conversations were monitored by guards. Prisoners were expected to snap to rigid attention and salute whenever the warden appeared. When it was time to go for a brief morning walk, they lined up with their noses against the brick wall, arms at their side. When released by command, they walked 10 feet apart and remained absolutely silent. A smile could cost a meal. They were issued 3 skimpy meals a day. Breakfast was 3 slices of rye bread. Lunch was porridge. Dinner was usually a small portion of hot food. The boys quickly lost weight. "One day, when I was extremely hungry, I asked the guard if I could have a portion more," Egil later wrote. "He replied angrily that we were not meant to become obese. He took away my meal. I lost 20 kilos, that's 44 pounds, in the first month or 2. They followed a harsh daily routine. A clanging bell at 6 o'clock jarred them awake and sent them scrambling to their feet. They relieved themselves, washed their floors, and gobbled breakfast. Work started at 7. They worked 10 hours a day in their cells, monotonously sorting mountains of postcards from the prison's print shop into bundles of 25. They continued working until 6 in the evening. Every 2 weeks they got a hot shower. On Sunday the boys were offered the opportunity to go to church. Back home they had eagerly skipped Reverend Pedersen's church services to practice shooting the machine gun in the monastery loft. But now they jumped at any chance for a break from prison tedium. Each of the 7 boys sat alone in an enclosed booth, each booth angled so that they could see the priest but not one another. Each boy reacted to imprisonment in his own way. Egil struggled to stave off feelings of despair. "I missed my mates," he later wrote. "The loneliness was great. In my thoughts I convinced myself that I had done the right thing by taking part in the fight against the Germans, but in the many lonely hours came the doubt anyway, often very insidious. There was no one to talk to besides myself. The light in the cell was turned off at 9 p.m. Many times I lay in my bed and struggled with the temptation to give up, to take a razor blade and slit my wrist, and to stop the beating of my heart. I would not be discovered until 4 a.m., I told myself. By contrast, Ulf Darkett seemed to process an inner cheerfulness even in the darkest of circumstances. When the others would sit on their cots, despondently staring at the barred window on the dingy snow, they could often hear Ulf singing his favorite song, which began, "There will be flowers in the window where my loved one will be living." Knud Petersen had no intention of taking his life, but he was far too angry to sing. Knud Petersen: I did not adjust. I regarded the Danish jailers as German cooperators and traitors. I was in enemy land. I was punished again and again at Nyborg. Mostly they took things away. They took away my drawing materials and books from the prison library. For a month they took away happy hour between 8 and 9 at night. The one time I could talk to my mates. Once I threw a bucket of water onto a guard's backside when he wasn't looking. He never forgave me. I smashed my own pocket watch onto the prison floor. They repaired it and sacked me 5 work days. I was punished for keeping an unclean cell, for not obeying orders, for talking to my friends when ordered to shut up. And I was an easy target. I was too tall to hide behind anyone else. They tried to strip away your identity and play with your mind. There was one little guard, pudgy and red-faced, who really hated me. He would jingle his keys outside my cell. The sound would drive me crazy, because I knew the person jingling them was free. He also had a spy hole in the door. I always had the feeling I was being watched. One night when I was in bed, I saw a mouse in my cell, illuminated by the moonbeam on the floor. It was just sitting there looking at me. I was terrified. I jumped up on the bed, screaming. Guards came running. When they realized what was going on, they doubled up in laughter. I yelled back, "You can laugh only because you have guns on you. You are safe." They slammed the door and gathered outside to watch my misery through their peephole. "The mouse is going to get you, 28, the chubby guard cackled. The mouse scuttled softly around the radiator pipes and seemed to try to settle in for the night. I heard every move it made. I wrapped my sheet around my head to block out the sound, but even that didn't work. The next morning, Oof came in, trapped the poor animal, and took it away. My obsession with Greth got worse. Now she was a goddess to me, occupying my thoughts and dreams. We were allowed to write only 1 letter home every 2 weeks, not exceeding 4 pages. Sometimes they were so heavily censored that almost every word was blacked out. I would use all 4 pages writing about Greth. My parents wanted to know my health. I wanted a photograph of Greth. My sister would say that Greth sent her greetings. I wanted her photo. Finally, my worried family was able to obtain a photo of her. There she was, seated on the ground with 5 puppies. It was all I ever got. And there's a drawing of Knud Petersen. There's a drawing of Knud Petersen with Greth and his dreams. The boys hungered for news of the war, hoping the British were gaining ground against Germany. But during family visits they were forbidden to discuss political events. Conversations were closely monitored by guards. The prison passed out a weekly newspaper entitled Near and Far Away. It presented an upbeat Nazi version of the war, along with cheerful family stories and a page on sports. The boys read it over and over. Parents tried to report news, but little got past the guards who monitored their conversations. Still, information leaked in. One time at bedtime, guards ordered the boys to take off their shoes and handed them out the door. What was this? It made no sense at all. The whispered explanation came during a family visit. Knud Hornbo and the Holberg brothers had remained in Aalborg, where they had shared the cell with the dummy escape bar that Alf and Jens had fashioned. At night, they had gone out for sabotage and returned in the morning, but they had just been captured during one of their escapes via the dummy window bar. Now the shoes made sense. The warden didn't want the same thing to happen at Nyborg. Take away their shoes, he had ordered his guards. Let's not give the boys any ideas. Vi vil vinde. We will win. This is a little thing, so it's not part of the actual book. In 1943, the Churchill Club's impact grew steadily outside the prison walls. The British Royal Air Force dropped leaflets telling the club story all over Denmark in January and again in July. The second flyer concluded, the schoolboys of Aalborg should be allowed to compare their actions with some of the best that take place in other occupied countries. In April, the American radio series The March of Time dramatized the Aalborg boys' sabotage. The radio played the tearful Danish judge end his sentencing speech with, "Be brave, boys. You will never serve your whole sentence. For brighter times will soon come to Denmark and to the whole world. Be patient. You won't have to wait long." And that's the end of it. Despite the censorship, news of the war seeped into the prison and traveled from cellmate to cellmate. Inmates heard of a major Allied victory at El Alamein in North Africa, and more progress in Stalingrad in Russia. Sometimes information came from unexpected sources. Led Peterson. One day in the library, I met a prisoner who had been arrested a few months after us. He knew who we were, and had heard that we were in Nyborg. He came pushing a book cart to each cell once every 2 weeks, offering books to read. A guard followed right behind him. The first time he came to me, he looked into my eyes and told me to select a specific book and turn to a specific page. On that page, I found a code. By spelling with combinations of underlined words and letters, I was informed about the British bombings of the shipyard Bursmar and Wayne in Copenhagen. This was 1943, and we never met again after the war. He was very brave and clever to inform me as he did. The Churchill Club remained a potent symbol of resistance in Denmark, even as its members languished behind bars. One day they were told to put on their civilian clothes and assemble in the main room. Waiting there was a formally dressed man with a familiar, mild face and head of curly hair. It was the Danish Secretary of Justice, Thune Jacobsen. He said he wanted to talk to them, to see how they were doing. His tone was apologetic, Egil recalled. He asked us to be patient, to understand that his work was the best he could do for the benefit of all Danes. He was not a Nazi beetle, he said. The more he talked, the more he made a fool of himself. For us, he was one of the ones who aided the Germans. The telegram crisis. Late in 1942, Adolf Hitler sent Denmark's king, Christian X, Christian X, a warm personal telegram congratulating the king on his 72nd birthday. The king replied with a mere, "My utmost thanks," signed Christian Rex. Hitler took it as a personal slight. Enraged, the Führer immediately recalled his ambassador from Copenhagen and expelled the Danish ambassador from Germany. Hitler removed Werner Best, a dedicated Nazi and Gestapo member, to Copenhagen as the High Commander of Denmark. Led Petersen. Thune was the worst kind of Nazi collaborator. He said our work had been useless because the British did not want Danes committing acts of sabotage against the Germans, but we knew it was a lie. The British had already organized a Danish sabotage force, and we knew it. He told us we should be grateful that we had good homes to return to, unlike most prisoners in the building. He made me sick. My letter to my parents the week after his visit was so full of spite for him that the guards returned it to me 3 times to rewrite it. Finally, I didn't send it at all. One night, a new batch of prisoners arrived at Nyborg. Word went from cell window to the next. They were schoolboys from Aalborg. Their group was called Denmark's Freedom League. They had been inspired by us. Like us, they had been caught by Danish police. They said there were many others out there, and resistance was growing. That was the best news we got, the best sign of all. A prisoner sentenced it, and there's a picture of KNUD Petersen's letters, except an entire page is blacked out because it's all shouldn't be said. The guards don't want it getting out. A prisoner sentenced at Nyborg was divided into 3 stages. Stage 1 prisoners, the newest, had almost no privileges. Books borrowed from the prison library had to have a religious theme. Family members could write only 1 letter every 14 days. In Stage 2, things relaxed a bit. Inmates could go to a room to play table tennis or chess between 8 and 9 p.m., or they could use this happy hour, as it was called, to talk among themselves. Stage 2 inmates could take out any book in the library. Led Petersen used this opportunity to catch up on classic works of literature by writers such as Goethe, Schiller, and Homer. Stage 2 prisoners also got a small garden plot that they could use as they wished. Egil turned his into a park with castles. Jens grew a vegetable garden. Ulf made a lovely stone garden. Nud let his grow wild. Stage 2 and Stage 3 prisoners also got to have some hobby materials in the cell. Ulf at last got material to carve wooden airplanes. Nud got an artist's sketchbook. He intended on drawing set designs for theater plays, until he noticed a warning printed on the front page. Led Petersen. A message in bold letters read, "You are not allowed to make drawings of naked women." I filled the entire sketchbook with naked girls, and when I got my porch the next day, I used it as glue and plastered all the walls and my cells with the drawings. This was my first art exhibition. There went all my hobby materials for the next 2 months. I was a terrible prisoner. One day, late in 1942, a tall, slim, long-legged man wearing glasses had introduced himself to the boys as Hugo Wars Petersen. They could call him Mr. Wara. He had been sent by the prison to be their teacher since they were still of school age. They would work in a large room designed as the schoolroom. The first test would be to complete their middle school exam. Their old textbooks were en route from Aalborg, and they would study for an hour after breakfast each day, sometimes working in groups of 3 or 4. They would study Danish, history, German, arithmetic, and geometry. They would take their written exams in their cells. Oral exams would be in the schoolroom. After months of harshness, Mr. Wara was a breath of fresh air. He spoke to them as human beings. He arranged prison visits by well-known poets and convinced prison authorities to return the boys' watches, glasses, and family photos. He even got some of the guards to call them by their names rather than their numbers. Then Pedersen. Mr. Wara encouraged my interest in art. He gave me many more art magazines than the regulations allowed. He read Henrik Ibsen dramas to us on Sunday afternoons. He was a wonderful actor. He was especially kind to us at Christmas time, which meant a lot. It was the first Christmas any of us had been away from home. Memories of family and friends floated back. I wanted to cry, but I had forgotten how. I finally discovered that by softly singing Christmas songs in my cell at night, I could make tears flow down my cheeks. I sang every song I knew and wept the whole next day. Mr. Wara made sure we were treated specially on Christmas Eve, which is when we celebrated the holiday. We were summoned into the schoolroom and served a delicious pork steak, and dessert. I decorated the room with a sculpture of snow-covered hill. I drew a snow landscape on the chalkboard, too. We gobbled up so much heavy food that night that they had to feed us fried herring on Christmas Day to absorb the fat. The whole day was wonderful. The day after that, while we were cleaning up, the chubby guard who was my nemesis watched me silently as I pushed my snow sculpture over to the far corner. Finally, he called across the room, "Take good care of that thing, 28. You're going to have to bring it back next Christmas time." It was a cruel reminder that I still more than a year to go at Nyborg. He didn't have to say that. The guards were robots. Soon after the new year, Mr. Wara saddened us boys by announcing he would be leaving Nyborg for a different assignment. In April 1943, Helge Milo and Mogens Thompson, the boys who had drawn their briefest sentences, were released from prison and taken home by their families. That left 5. 4 months later, in late August 1943, inmates rushed to their windows when they heard the roar of airplanes. Angel wrote, "I watched a large group of Allied bombers fly past. It was glorious. Now the Germans will finally get what they deserved, I thought." 3 or 4 hours later, they flew back, but not so many of them. There's a little blurb. August 29th, 1943. The sounds the Churchill clubbers heard outside their cells on August 29th, 1943, reflected an upheaval in Danish society. Throughout the spring of 1943, Germany had become increasingly frustrated with the strikes by Danish workers for higher wages. When Germans cracked down with brutal countermeasures, Danes in 33 towns stopped working. Germans issued orders prohibiting public meetings and gatherings after dark. Danes refused to cooperate. On August 29th, Germany, exasperated, took over the government of Denmark, stationing troops at railroad stations, power plants, factories, and other key places, including, as the boy discovered, Nyborg State Prison. Okay, resuming the book. One day, German soldiers with rifles surged into the prison. In their cells, the boys could hear the clomp of heavy boots, but could not see what was going on. Rumors flew from window to window along the Division K wing. Soldiers had come to fetch them to Germany. No, they were rounding up Danish citizens who kept weapons in their homes. That actually made sense. It had long been rumored that Germans stored confiscated weapons in the Nyborg prison's giant loft. After hours of anxious waiting, a guard came to Division K to inform them that the Danish rulers had defied orders and Germany had taken over the government. Danish authorities had refused to accept German occupation any longer. The protectorate was over. What the boys had heard from their cell windows were the sounds of Germans attacking Danes at Nyborg Strand and Allied planes responding. That's how I experienced August 29th, 1943, Angel wrote. At last, our country stood up and we behaved as Norwegians did. But what would it mean to the boys in Nyborg State Prison? Would they now be sent by brutal Nazi masters to German prisons, or would their prison now be run by the Gestapo? As it turned out, the day's events changed Nyborg State Prison very little. Knud Pedersen. There's a little picture of Danish citizens at Aalborg, August 1943, in open conflict with German occupiers. Knud Pedersen. The turning point for Denmark may have been August 29, 1943, but not much at all changed for us. The main difference I saw was that Danish guards that the Danish guard outside my cell window, the one who had paced back and forth counting bricks in the wall, was replaced by a German with a helmet, rifle, and battle uniform. Soon he was counting bricks just like the Dane. 3 weeks later, on September 18th, 1943, Mogens Fridtjof, the professor, and Egil Astrup Fredriksson were released. Months later, Ulf Darket, too, said his goodbyes, and the Churchill Club in Nyborg was down to the Pedersen brothers. They were transferred to a different unit, near the adult prisoners. There is a little blurb that is titled "The Rescue of Danish Jews." On September 28, 1943, a German diplomat secretly informed Danish resistance leaders of Nazi plans to deport the Danish Jews to German concentration camps for mass execution. The Danes quickly organized a nationwide effort to smuggle Jews by sea to neutral Sweden. Tipped off to the German plans, most of Denmark's Jews left Danish cities by train, by car, or on foot. Non-Jewish Danes hid them in homes, hospitals, and churches until they could be moved to Sweden. Within a 2-week period, fishermen helped ferry some 7,200 Danish Jews and 680 of their non-Jewish family members to safety in Sweden. The only Churchill Club member directly affected was Egil. His mother was Jewish, and the family was deeply concerned. Mere 10 days after Egil was released from Nyborg, he remembered, "Our parish priest advised us to go underground. We left home and stayed with friends. Fortunately, the Germans didn't catch us, so after some days we moved back home again." And then there's a picture with the caption saying, "A reenactment of the October 1943 boat-lifted Jan of Shoes to Sweden from a Swedish film produced in 1945. And then there's another picture. It says, "In America, an exaggerated version of the Churchill Club story appeared in the September 1943 issue of True Comics under the title The Boy Saboteurs." Also see page 180. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a big thumbs up. Can't comment down below. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next video.